I am human, or at least I claim to be. ChatGPT, well, a lot of people think of it as an AI, artificial intelligence, but it's an LLM, or a large language model. I am far too stupid to get into the distinctions of what that means, but basically, this thing ain't reaching the singularity anytime soon. But ChatGPT is super useful if you know how to work within its limitations. I use it practically every day. It helps me make sense of the shattered landscape that is my life. But when I'm not trying to see if ChatGPT can do my job for me, I sometimes ask it for help during these Pokemon runs. This time, I decided to take that one step further. I decided to see if ChatGPT could put together a decent enough strategy to take me through the entire game all the way to red. When I was a kid, for some reason, instead of changing up Pokemon or strategies, I just repeatedly played the game in the exact same way each time. I don't know why. Well, I'm sure a therapist would know why, but anyway, we need to establish a few ground rules of how the runs are going to go. I'm going to split the game into sections based upon the locations we visit in the game. For example, the intro up to entering Violet City would be one section. Throughout each section, I'll ask ChatGPT what it wants to do. What Pokemon should it catch? Should it grab any items? Should it make any considerations for the long or short game? Things like that. Then I'll follow its instructions. I won't labour over each battle, but I will ask ChatGPT, given its suggestions, how gym leaders, the Elite Four, etc. can be handled. The rules this time around are extremely simple. No items in battle, held items are fine, and no saving between the Elite Four. Now, getting the game started. Because ChatGPT is picky about being picky, I explained the setup to it. While it doesn't like to choose, we can get around this without turning it into Skynet. I'm getting ChatGPT to choose a Pokemon, and after some back and forth, it finally landed on Cyndaquil, citing that it has an advantage against the first gym in that fire type moves are super effective against flying types. Well, okay then. It then says that Cyndaquil has strong offensive capabilities. Yep, guess that's fine. Finally, it says that fire has an advantage over common types like bug, grass and ice. Don't know about the last one in terms of commonness, but that is good enough. With Cyndaquil chosen, I then asked ChatGPT two further questions. 1. Did it want to reset for better IVs? And 2. What are we going to name this Pokemon? For the first question, ChatGPT ultimately sided on no, citing that it's a casual run and will be fine. For the second, it chooses Ember for a name. It won't be getting any massive points for creativity, but I do decide to let it name all the Pokemon it instructs me to capture, when I can remember to do so. With our Pokemon and our nickname chosen, we can start the game proper. I asked ChatGPT for a list of things to do in New Bark Town and across Route 29. In my playthroughs, I'd grab the potion from the PC, pick up the items along the route, and grab that berry too. While trying to be specific for actions, especially regarding grabbing items, it continues to be vague. So I just decided to implement a game plan of, if I see an item along my journey, I'll pick it up, as a part of natural exploration. I won't pick up any hidden / out of the way items if it doesn't make sense to get them while exploring. I head along Route 29, battling along the way. I do not pick up the berries from outside the berry guy's house, nor do I go in there, which I do in a casual run to grab some more, berries. I asked Chat, we're just going to be abbreviating it to Chat from now on, what it should do to prepare for the fight. It suggests leveling Cyndaquil to around 8 or 10. In these instances, I'll be going for the lower range of its suggestions because it can get super tedious when I don't. However, for the rival, I did grind to level 10. It also says to grab some potions to use in the battle, even though we can't do that, as well as understanding type matchups and saving before the encounter, which is fair enough. For the first rival battle against Totodile, we're now level 10, having recently learned Smokescreen. In my casual runs, I'd have a berry equipped to tackle this at a lower level. At this level, we just have to use Leer a couple of times while Totodile does the same. Then we can defeat the Totodile with a couple of uses of tackle, a fairly standard inoffensive battle. With that done, we head back to New Town. I decide to name the rival my usual name in the spirit of competition. We've now got Violet City and the eventual leader Falkner. As I'll be doing with all sections, especially those with gym leaders, I'll ask chat to think about things such as what Pokemon we'll need, what level they should be, and anything specific we should do in these sections, and if any Pokemon of our team should be switched out. As you head towards Violet City, you get a phone call from your mother. Typically, I don't bother giving her any portion of my Pokédollars because I like to roleplay in a game that I am fiscally responsible and financially independent. However, chat does insist that I give mother a portion of my winnings, so I oblige. In the run up to Falkner, I asked chat if we should consider catching some Pokemon. It's just Cyndaquil right now, he's feeling pretty lonely. It suggests Geodude, Onix, Bellsprout, Zubat, Ghastly, and a Rattata or a Sentret. I feel maybe that is just a little overkill for Pidgey and Pidgeotto, but I will soon learn for ChatGPT there is no kill like overkill. But I do ask it to be a little more mindful of its choices, to which it then singles out a few. Geodude or Onix, which after some prodding tells me to pick up Geodude, a Bellsprout, a Zubat, and a Ghastly. So I go and start capturing them. The Geodude we can grab from Dark Cave. Chat chooses to name it Rocky, inspired. We then capture a Zubat. I forgot to name it. For Bellsprout, it first tells me that I can capture it from Bellsprout Tower, which is obviously wrong because we're not playing Crystal. However, we can grab it in the grassy patch just outside of Violet City's eastern exit. It chooses the name Sprouty. Finally, for Ghastly, as long as it's night, we can grab it in Bellsprout Tower and name it Spectre, which is badass. Then I ask it what level I should be aiming for. It wants Cyndaquil at level 14 and the rest at 12, so I have no choice but to start grinding. And while it does allow me to tackle Bellsprout Tower, this is a tedious process. Going forward, chat seems to be overly cautious regarding levels. In a casual run, at least in mine, you kind of just main a certain Pokemon for a while, depending on the challenges ahead, without too much worry that every single Pokemon be at some minimum level. Leveling up Ghastly and Zubat is also super tedious because of their, at this point in the game, trash movesets. However, after doing that for ages, we're finally ready to take on Falkner. Chat recommends that we lead with Cyndaquil even though our Geodude has learned Rock Throw. It then suggests Zubat and claims it has Wing Attack. Certified liar. The closest Zubat gets to learning Wing Attack at that level would be in Black and White 2, where it learns it at level 15. It does learn Bite though. It then says Geodude might not be the best choice because of its disadvantages. I'm assuming to Mudslap, but it could probably make it through well enough. Move-wise, it suggests that Cyndaquil should be able to handle both the Pidgey and the Pidgeotto with just Ember because it's super effective. Sure, alright then. The Pidgey, we use Ember, it nearly takes out the thing. It does get off one Mudslap before we finish it off. I'm still getting tripped up by having left Switch on because I'm used to having it as set for solo runs, which it will be a running theme. When Pidgeotto comes out, we use Ember, which does just over half. It uses Gust, which is pretty pathetic. Then we can finish it off with another Ember. Thank God we spent that precious time leveling up the rest of our team. After Falkner, we are forced to pick up the egg from the professor's assistant. Casually, I do not use Togepi, but chat has other ideas. After a bit of a back and forth, chat thinks that I should keep Togepi in my team. It also suggests that I pick up a Mareep as I head down Route 32, which it proudly names Voltwool.
Very wool.
Our party now consists of Ember, the Quilava, Rocky, the Geodude, Spectre, the Ghastly, the Egg, which will become Togepi, Voltwool, the Mareep, and Zubat, the Zubat. We eventually head through Union Cave and out into Azalea Town. I proceed through Slowpoke Well to gain some levels, because chat is forcing us to reach the heady heights of level 16 in anticipation of Bugsy's gym. Not only that, it wants Geodude at level 16, Zubat at 15, Mareep at 15, and Ghastly and Togepi at level 15. In grinding for these levels, I accidentally ended up running into the rival. Because we'd just been training Zubat, it's out first against the Ghastly. We have Bite, which is super effective, but just can't quite do over half HP. We then get licked and paralysed by Ghastly. Despite being paralysed, we do eventually get off another Bite and defeat it. Against the rival Zubat, we switch to Voltwool. Though Zubat is quicker, it can't do much damage. and our Thundershock does a fair bit of damage, plus we get the paralysis, making the battle rather trivial. The rival's final Pokemon is Croconaw, and we choose to keep Voltball around. Though still not faster than Croconaw, Thundershock does some decent damage and its Water Gun isn't too effective against us. All the battle requires is repeated use of Thundershock to win pretty easily. When Togepi finally hatches, we now have an awesome time leveling it up. While I did stick to Slowpoke well for a while, Togepi's moveset, with its only attacking move being a metronome, make things go slowly. I eventually decided to teach it Swift, which I picked up from Union Cave, so it can start outputting something close to consistent damage. Then finally, once we have leveled up all our Pokemon to chat's recommendation, we can tackle Bugsy. According to the strat, using Quilava is the best option. Secondary to that would be using the opportunity to do some switch training, but because that's listed as a secondary optional option, I'll primarily be using Quilava in case the worst should happen. However, you can probably guess how the battle will go. However, at one point I did check with chat if it was aware that you could pick up a Charcoal, which would have been pretty useful for Quilava. At no point did it suggest doing this, so our loss, I guess. For Bugsy himself, the battle's pretty predictable. Against the Metapod, we stick with Ember and it ends up being a one-shot. We choose not to swap in any of our other Pokemon, then we can one-shot Weedle with another Ember. We then choose not to change again. When Scyther's sent out, it does outspeed us, but Fury Cutter is pretty ineffective. Our Ember doesn't quite do half, should have had that Charcoal. Scyther then keeps going with Fury Cutter and we come close to knocking it out with Ember. The battle, however, is a foregone conclusion, another victory, and another round of pointlessly leveling up our Pokemon. Like we did before, we now ask chat how to proceed with the next section of the game, namely Goldenrod, Whitney, and the surrounding routes. Chat does suggest that I pick up the radio card and the bike, which I often forget to do, so he's got me there. For Whitney, I list off my current team. Now, I know it's best to have a fighting Pokemon to make Whitney easier. When I was a kid, I didn't know that, so like a lot of people, Whitney was a wall. As I've been doing at the start of sections, I've been asking if there are any Pokemon that I should capture, and if I do, which Pokemon on my team should they be replaced with? Machop? Good. Route 38? Not only are you a liar, chat, but I also can't reach that route yet. So I probe a little deeper, knowing that the answer I want is you can trade for it. But I go down the path of I can't seem to find it here. Finally, we hit on some gold and are told we can grab one from the department store, so we do just that. But before we can face Whitney, chat wants our Pokemon in the level ranges from 18 to 20. And like previous gym leaders, while I applaud its thoroughness through every part of the game, for ChatGPT, as I said, there is no kill like overkill, so we have to get our entire party from their current levels up to 20. Togepi, like it will be for some time in this run, will be the biggest pain because it is super weak and hardly learns anything good outside of the TMs you sacrifice for it. Either way, the good point is that we can grab some decent levels by going north, all the way to the national park and the surrounding areas. Finally, when the whole gang's ready for a fight, we can return to Whitney. However, chat's not done with its sage advice just yet. Despite us having the Machop, which is the obvious choice to just steamroll Whitney, it decides that our order should be Flaffy and then Machop or Geodude. It also believes that Flaffy's typing will be super effective against Whitney. Hard disagree on that one, but I do have to give it some props for suggesting I get Flaffy Thunder Punch from the Goldenrod department store. So we head into battle. Our level 20 Voltwall is out first. We have the level advantage and Thunder Punch is a powerful move. As you might expect, it's a pretty decisive one-shot against Clefairy. Upon chat's advice, with Miltank coming up, we change to Machop and can then start using Low Kick. The move isn't doing a ton of damage, but we'll take a third. As Miltank starts to retaliate with Rollout, we can simply keep using Low Kick to take Miltank down. Again, so glad we leveled up the rest of our team. Normally, you'd journey to Ecruteak next, however, there's a tree standing in your way, so what do? The next exchange I had with chat appeared to shatter its mind. The tree, Sudowoodo, can be cleared with the Squirtle Pail or whatever it's called. I know you can only get this once you've beaten Whitney, but chat, who is using me as a meat puppet, does not. When I first asked chat what I should do after beating Whitney, it does suggest talking to NPCs, but that's kind of vague and time consuming, so I try a more direct approach. I say I'm stuck in front of a tree after leaving Goldenrod. Its first suggestion is to use Cut. Fair enough. but that's not working. I then tell it that it's a plant that shakes when I interact. It then suggests I use headbutt. Close, but it's not that kind of tree. This back and forth goes on for a few conversations until chat hints that progress may be blocked by not having been the gym leader. I go down this route for a while, but it's leading nowhere. It's only when I mention that I'm being blocked from getting to Ecruteak that it's able to suggest that I clear Sudowoodo with Rock Smash. After saying this approach does not work, it finally relents and instructs me to grab the Squirtle Ball thing. Thank God, we can proceed. As we're heading to Ecruteak, I ask which Pokemon, if any, should I consider replacing in my current team. It suggests Misdreavus, cool Pokemon, can't get it though, liar. It also suggests being around level 25 for Morty, which is okay. Chat then suggests I do a few things in the city, such as head to the Kimono Dance Theatre and the Burn Tower. Because we need those sweet levels, I have no choice but to not only do all of that, but clear out the routes to the east and the west as well. Fine, there's nothing more I love than trying to level up Togepi. For the battle with Morty, chat suggests sending out Haunter first because it is immune to normal type moves that Ghastly typically uses.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that on opposite day.
It suggests using Shadow Ball, which we don't have until we've defeated Morty. Then, as if sensing we're going to get dunked on, chat suggests we use Quilava as our backup. Whatever, let's just go for it. In the battle itself, I tried to do the best with what we have, starting with Hypnosis. Thankfully, it procs, Ghastly is then put to sleep, and we can rely on our only attacking move, Nightshade. A couple of Nightshades are capable of defeating Ghastly, but when Haunter comes out and we miss, Haunter then uses Curse. We could have technically switched out to not only remove Curse, but fulfill sending out a Pokemon that our Haunter can't handle. I decided that part of the judgment could fall to me. We need at least a half sensible human being behind the wheel. With Haunter cursed and probably not going to last the remainder of the fight, I decide to go for Hypnosis again. When it thankfully procs, we go back to the tried and tested method of laying on the Nightshades. Haunter's defeated, and Gengar's out next. We know it's going to outspeed us. Or maybe not. But when we miss with Hypnosis, Gengar uses Shadow Ball and we're down. Well, now Quilava's up next. But as soon as it's sent out, we get put to sleep. Then Gengar absolutely tears it apart with Dream Eater. Quilava is rendered totally ineffective against Gengar and eventually ends up getting KO'd. Chat obviously thought these two Pokemon were all we needed to defeat Morty, so I then have to revert to my own judgment. I choose Flaffy to help pull it back. However, as soon as Flaffy's out, Gengar puts it to sleep too. Morty's Pokemon then takes the same tactic of using Dream Eater to send Flaffy straight to the Poke Center. It's at this point I think we're heading towards our first total defeat of the run. If Gengar keeps scoring those Hypnosises, we've really got no effective counter to that. In a moment of desperation, I send out Rocky, we've got Magnitude, finally Hypnosis misses and we can attack. Magnitude 5 isn't great, but it at least does over half of Gengar's HP. In retaliation, Gengar goes for another Hypnosis and misses. We can then use Magnitude to knock it out. With just Haunter left, our biggest roadblock is out of the way. While we don't outspeed it, it does go for Mean Look, which is kind of pointless, and we can then one-shot it with a final Magnitude. A pretty close call, but Rocky came in clutch right at the end there. Well, yeah, it's good to keep your Pokemon's levels up. I think it would have been wiser to either have super effective moves against Morty, or at least grab a Mint Berry from Moo Moo Farm. Chat not knowing that I can forgive, but saying that Ghastly would be using normal type moves is just where I draw the line. We've now reached a crossroads in Pokemon Gold. Your average player, whether by design or happenstance, and I'm making a generalization here, tend to pick the left. To Olivine and then Chuck. It makes sense because you get Fly, and Chuck's level is a little lower than the others. I asked chat what it wanted to do, and it ultimately singled out Chuck. While I agree with the fact that Fly is useful and Togetic may resist Chuck's Pokemon, it's not like we've got any Fly moves to deal with them anyway, but an A for effort. However, there's one thing standing in our way, a giant body of water, and we lack a Pokemon with the Surf ability. So chat, what wisdom will you shower us with? It first mentions capturing a Lapras, which is generally sound advice. However, it's not Friday and I can't be bothered resetting the clock. The answer that I want is catch a Krabby. As if sensing this, chat decides that I won't be wasting enough time in this run and suggests I catch a Wooper and level it up to Quagsire. Nah, I'm not doing that. Finally, it suggests capturing a Magikarp and leveling it up into Gyarados. Now this while not the easiest option, is easier than the other two. Using the Goldenrod, you can capture a level 20 Magikarp in Olivine if you want, and can just level that up, so that's what we do. Finally, we can head to Siamwood and deal with Chuck. In the gym, however, we've got another problem. No one knows strength. So chat nominates Rocky the Geodude as our strength user. Fine. We've then got the uphill struggle of getting our team of Togetic, Typhlosion, Geodude, Fluffy and Ghastly up to a minimum level of 35. Chat thankfully suggests using the Wild Tentacruel outside of Siamwood to do this, a place we'd be revisiting a lot in the near future. Because of the open nature of some of the most significant parts of Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal, it is an absolute chore to level up Pokemon throughout the entire game. You're either doing it outside of Siamwood or in Victory Road. Now, if I'd remembered that part, I may have rethought this whole thing, but here we are, straight up destroying Tentacruel. In the end, we get there, and now chat can shower us with its battle knowledge. Firstly, it suggests we start with Togetic because of moves like Steel Wing and Fly. Off to a great start. I tell it my Togetic doesn't have any of those flying moves, so it then suggests Quilava. It then wants us to follow it with Ampharos or Haunter, which is something I can get behind. Either way, we use Flame Wheel against Primeape, which does just over half. Primeape retaliates with Leer, it misses, then we can use Flame Wheel again. Primeape's down. Good enough. For Poliwrath, we stick with Quilava at chat's insistence. As you might imagine, us using Quick Attack and Poliwrath using Surf means that it's able to knock us out in just 2 hits. Good thing we now have Ampharos to follow up. Luckily, we're faster than Poliwrath and have Thunder Punch. As you might expect, that's a one-shot. Now that we have Fly, we've reduced just a little of the tedium from this run. Chat's previous decision of Chuck, Jasmine, Pryce hasn't changed, so we can take the secret potion we acquired and hand it off to her. With that done, it's strategizing time. We've got a good team at a decent enough level to please chat. While it rightly suggests sending out Ember first to utilize our fire moves, it then suggests Ampharos, which is a solid enough strat. Thankfully, at level 35, Quilava can easily dominate the battle. Against the first Magnemite, he can hit it with Flame Wheel for a one-shot. Of course, we've then got Metal Snake coming out next. While Steelix does have high defense, that would have been an issue in later gens, Flame Wheel, like all elemental moves, is special in Gen 2. It can easily wipe out Steelix. Now, we've just got that final Magnemite left. Like the first, we can KO it with Flame Wheel. With Chuck and Jasmine defeated, we've got Pryce. There's all that rocket stuff to deal with too. Chat does suggest we add the red Gyarados to our team, which it wants to call Crimson Wave. Well, that doesn't fit, so Crimson Wave it is. And it also suggests including it in our current team. Seems like we have a free slot where the Bellsprout used to be, I chuck it in. As for levels, we're mercifully told that 35 to 40 range is fine. We can save all that fantastic grinding for later. For the battle with Pryce, the heavy hitters are going to be Typhlosion and Ampharos, with the former leading the charge. While yeah, fire is good against ice, it's not going to be great against Seal. For it, we can just keep spamming Flame Wheel. Somehow that strat ends up working, and Seal doesn't even choose to rest. For Dugong, while Flame Wheel does neutral damage, we do end up getting a crit. Dugong retaliates with Headbutt, which does hardly anything. We serve up another Flame Wheel to defeat the Dugong. Up next, we have a Pokemon that we're actually effective against, Piloswine. Our Flame Wheel is super effective and is just shy of knocking it out. While Piloswine uses Blizzard, pathetic, we've got a Hyper Potion coming. Despite that, not only are we quicker, but Flame Wheel ended up being a range, and we can knock Piloswine out. So I guess we got the grinding out of the way and I can just breeze through the rest of the gym leaders, but chat is intent on killing our pace for Clair. The grind to level 40 isn't a problem. Chat wants us to get Piloswine though, and to do that we first need to catch Swinub, and Swinub is level 20. Plus, with the levels we'll be aiming for, the only move it'll naturally learn that's useful is Powdered Snow. A true force to be reckoned with. We end up grinding in order to level up Swinub to Piloswine and also get our team to their required levels. One super annoying thing is that your best place to level Swinub is the path south of Blackthorn. There are Graveler here. Ice is effective against it. However, Graveler loves to use self-destruct. So in this leveling process, Swinub ended up getting blown up dozens of times. The strat against Clair is it's awful. It wants us to start with Ampharos. While it does have the advantage against the Kingdra, the Dragonair resist. So will we even survive to see Kingdra? Then it wants Haunter out next, okay. But Piloswine being third, after spending all that time leveling the thing, is a bit of a shot to the nuts. We start with Ampharos. I use Dragonair's tricks against it with Thunder Wave. Not only does it proc, but Dragonair is paralysed on its next turn. Thunder Punch does maybe a little under a third. I end up switching to Tackle the next turn, while Dragonair tries and fails to paralyse us. While we do eventually knock Clair's first Dragonair out, we get paralysed for our troubles. For the second Dragonair, we get into this back and forth of getting slammed and then retaliating with Thunder Punch when we're not paralysed. And somehow, at 30 HP, we end up knocking out the second Dragonair. However, for Clair's third and final Dragonair, there's no way we're making it through to Kingdra. Just 2 slams later, Clair's defeated Ampharos. Now, we've got to rely on Haunter for the time being. One cool thing at least is that Spectre knows Dream Eater now. By putting Dragonair to sleep, we can use a combo of Dream Eater to whittle its health down and then use Shadow Ball to finish it off. Finally, there's just Kingdra. While we do outspeed it, our Hypnosis misses. Kingdra then hits us with Surf and it does well over half damage. Then, we're just happy to sit there and use Dream Eater to devour Kingdra's HP. At one point, its health does enter a range where Clair heals it, but it's still not waking up. It gets so bad that Clair uses a full heal on Kingdra, didn't even know she had one. By this time, however, the battle's pretty much settled. We can just keep attacking Kingdra until we eventually defeat it. I'd like to thank Piloswine for helping us get through this difficult time. With all 8 Johto badges collected, the Elite Four now stands in our way. We're going to be using every morsel of intellect from chat to get through this. Oh, and because I forgot before, I retroactively asked chat Piloswine's name. It suggests Glacier. Now, for levels, chat suggests between level 40 and 45, which is perfectly reasonable. We were mostly there anyway, just need to grind in Victory Road. However, chat has some suggestions for my team. Togetic is out. Haunter is out. At first, it wants Heracross. Can't get that. Machamp. Can't get that. Lapras. We'll get back to that. Gengar. We had Gengar at home. Its name was Spectre the Haunter. So, it leaves us with 2 options, Kadabra and Espeon. Don't get me wrong, Espeon is awesome, it just requires work. We capture the Abra outside of Goldenrod, easy enough. For Espeon, we need to grab Eevee from Bill in Goldenrod. We then not only have to level it up its, level, but its friendship. Eevee will only evolve with a high enough friendship during the day. Like most things, it just takes time. We can use the EXP share for the bulk of the work, but there comes a point where we have to simply use Eevee while also going to the haircut bros in the Goldenrod Underground. We can do that by resetting the clock. But as your friendship increases, you're getting into diminishing returns with the haircuts, just like real life. Alongside that, we can check Eevee's friendship at the house in Goldenrod. Like I said, it's possible, it just takes time, so let's get it over with. Finally, we are done. We've got the suggested team, they're all at a minimum of level 45. I did ask chat to use the TMs that I'd found / purchased most effectively, and it thankfully instructed me to teach Ice Punch to Kadabra. At least there's a way through Lance eventually. But before that, we've got Will. Well, it wants us to lead with Kadabra because it can hit hard with psychic moves. Technically, you're not wrong. It also says to use Shadow Ball. Too late for that. Maybe you shouldn't have thrown away Haunter, right? So without any decent moves except for Ice Punch, we get things rolling. We outspeed Will's first Xatu and use Ice Punch, securing us a one-shot. Chat then suggests switching into Gyarados for the next Xatu, so we obey. Gyarados has Bite, which is super effective, even though it maybe does about a third. However, Psychic is doing some decent damage, especially when we get that special drop. Not only that, Will has a Max Potion, which he uses. Looks like Gyarados isn't long for this world. However, after Will's Max Potion, we get a crit with Bite, and because we're quicker, we can get another attack to defeat Xatu. Ultimately, we're told to stick with Gyarados against Jinx. That goes about as well as you would expect when Jinx uses Ice Punch. After some deliberation, chat's plan has Piloswine coming out next. Jinx goes for Double Slap, which does hardly anything. We can then counter with Earthquake to defeat the Jinx. For Executor, we are allowed to switch in Typhlosion. We've got Flame Wheel and are able to one-shot the Executor. With just one Pokemon left, we've got the go-ahead to use Ampharos against the Slowbro. Again, because Thunder Punch isn't physical, it can destroy Will's final Pokemon. Koga's up next. Chat suggests leading with Espeon as its psychic moves have the advantage. Can't argue with that. Things get a little shakier from there though. Typhlosion is good against a number of Koga's Pokemon, but Gyarados for the Muck? Gonna have to disagree there, chat. Piloswine, yeah, okay. Kadabra, good enough. So for Ariados, we have Solaris the Espeon come out and use Psychic. As you might expect, it's a one-shot. Chat wasn't too specific for Fortress, so we end up sticking with Espeon. Though Psychic isn't too effective, we do get a crit and nearly KO it. Fortress then goes for Spikes. In my solo runs, this is never a problem, and even now, it's better than it using Explosion. We don't get the potion from Koga, so we can knock it out with another Psychic. Muck's out next, so I guess Gyarados, you're up next. Surf does okay damage, and Muck's happy to just up its defenses. However, we do get hit with Sludge Bomb, poisoning Gyarados. Despite that, our next Surf crits, and we knock the Muck out. For the Crobat, I use Kadabra because chat said it'd be useful against the Crobat and the Venomoth. Turns out that it is. We not only outspeed, but use Psychic for a one-shot. For Koga's final Pokemon Venomoth, we just stick with Kadabra, another Psychic and another KO. Not a terrible battle, but kind of inefficient. For Bruno, chat's game plan is, well, it's not terrible. Leading with Ampharos or Espeon, the latter being an obvious choice, is a good enough play. Chat then goes off the rails, suggesting I use Piloswine because it supposedly double resists fighting moves. Then it suggests Typhlosion because it's effective against an Onix. The final cherry on this bad decision Sunday is the fact that Gyarados is allegedly weak to fighting moves. Well, let's see how that goes. We start with Espeon because I value winning. Psychic is of course a one-shot. Against my better judgment, and after some deliberation, I do eventually switch to Piloswine. We have Icy Wind, not a great ice move, and it even misses the first time. Onix uses Earthquake, but it's not too effective against us. We can then try for another Icy Wind, it hits this time and scores a crit, knocking Onix out. Bruno then plans on sending out Hitmonlee next, so I switch back in the Espeon. Again, Solaris, cool name, is super powerful, so it can easily deal with the Hitmonlee. I still stick with it for Hitmonchan, so when it comes out, we get another one-shot. Finally, Bruno just has his Machamp left. It's a bulky Pokemon, but of course, it is no match for Solaris' Psychic. All in all, a pretty comfortable battle considering chat's questionable choices. Karen, however, may not be so easy. We all know how bulky that Umbreon is, and we don't have any fighting moves to counter it. Not only that, chat's intent on making our lives harder. Of course it wants us to start with Espeon or Kadabra because their moves are super effective against Karen's Pokemon. Well, okay. Yeah, Typhlosion might be good because it can resist fire and has some okay moves. Don't quite know how Gyarados is supposed to be effective against Murkrow or Umbreon, and while Ampharos is decent, I doubt Murkrow has Thunder Wave. To top it all off, chat suggests Piloswine would be useful against Houndoom. A stellar strategic analysis of the battle. I swear it feels like chat is some kind of double agent in this run. We start with Espeon against Umbreon. It goes just about as well as you might imagine. Espeon's sole attacking move is Quick Attack, and in between getting confused and getting hit with Feint Attack, it's not long before Espeon's defeated. Well, we have Typhlosion as the backup. Despite Espeon's ineffectiveness, it did manage to lower Umbreon's health, so Typhlosion can finish off the bulky Pokemon with Flame Wheel. For Gengar, we eventually make the switch from Typhlosion to Kadabra. We end up being faster than Karen's Gengar, just one use of Psychic can easily one-shot the Pokemon. After thinking a bit and then consulting chat's strategy, we eventually switch into Ember again. While its Flame Wheel will deal neutral damage, it does well over half, and Murkrow's Feint Attack isn't exactly too effective. After another Flame Wheel, it's down. Next up, we have Houndoom. On chat's suggestion, this is where Gyarados comes into play. While we have Surf, Gyarados isn't exactly known for his special attack. In spite of that, Surf does end up doing solid damage against Houndoom. When Houndoom then hits us with Crunch, it takes about a quarter of our health off and drops our special defense. I was expecting a potion that never came, allowing us to knock it out with another Surf. Okay, just one Pokemon left. Vileplume. Mercifully, chat allows us to utilize Ember for this battle. We do, and we use Flame Wheel. but a combination of it being relatively weak in attack and Vileplume's bulk means we don't one-shot it. Vileplume then goes for Stun Spore, which ends up missing. No potion in sight, Ember lights a Vileplume for the win. With the Elite Four now conquered, Lance stands in our way. Chat's strat starts off generally making sense, suggesting Ampharos or Kadabra. I'm guessing because Gyarados has lower special defense. Piloswine is the right call next. Wish it had Ice Beam though. We've also got some solid enough advice for tackling Aerodactyl and Charizard, so I think we may just make it. Voltwall is up against Gyarados. We've got Thunder Punch, so of course we're going to get the one shot. The next part of the strat is bringing out Piloswine and hoping it can somehow carry us through the rest of the battle. We're obviously not outspeeding Dragonite and take a full-on Hyper Beam crit to the snout. Icy Wind is doing very solid damage, and we have Dragonite recharging the next turn, so we can definitely erase one Dragonite from the picture. Because we're using Piloswine, Lance opts to bring out Charizard next. We've got Gyarados waiting in the wings with Surf. Against Charizard, Surf is pulling in some good numbers. Its Flamethrower is pretty pathetic, so this one is a foregone conclusion. One more Surf from Crimson Wave, and we've defeated it. For the next level 47 Dragonite, we of course have to unleash Glacier, living up to its name there, and there is no way this thing is going first. It takes another Hyper Beam and is toast. After having a quick check of the strat, we have to bring out another Pokemon that's going to get sacrificed. Despite the back and forth, Ember will not be surviving this exchange. It's not long before Lance's Dragonite wins. Next in the firing line is going to be Ampharos. Again, not a great matchup in the least. When it comes out, I do decide to paralyze the Dragonite because it can't hurt. On the next turn, I then decide to set up a light screen because why not? In spite of everything, however, Ampharos' Thunder Punch is able to KO the level 47 Dragonite. But with the level 51 up next, it's not going to last long. When Dragonite does come out, it outspeeds Ampharos and uses Hyper Beam to put it out of his misery. We now just have 3 Pokemon left compared to Lance's 2. Gyarados is up next. While we have Dragon Breath, I'm not expecting too much from it here. The move does what? About a fourth or so? But the next time we use Dragon Breath, it does take it past half HP. If we could tank an Outrage or a Hyper Beam, we may just make it. We just need to keep hammering Dragon Breath while Dragonite goes for Outrage, and in the end we do eventually get it into Red Bar, and then we can knock it out. With the Aerodactyl out next, we stick with Gyarados. Obviously it's gonna get KO'd pretty swiftly. Aerodactyl uses Rock Slide, it's super effective, and that is the end of Crimson Wave. The next Pokemon we send out is Espeon, and it has a pretty good chance all things considered. Espeon even manages to outspeed Aerodactyl and use Psychic, which does some massive damage against Lance's final Pokemon. Aerodactyl then goes for Hyper Beam and misses. Surely we've won. Solaris uses a final Psychic and the battle's over. Well done, chat. Take a bow. Well, like half a bow, because there's still some game left for you to poorly strategize and waste my time. While I won't be asking chat to strategize for all the Kanto gym leaders save Blue, I do ask it which order I should tackle the gym leaders in. In Gen 2, the gym leaders and even Pokemon in the area are notoriously underleveled, making them not worth our time. As far as I see it, only 2 trainers are worth our time, Blue and Red. So I ask it, which order are we tackling these Kanto gym leaders? Proving itself to be a true OG, chat suggests we do them in Gen 1 order, props for that, even though it is slightly more time consuming. Another question I posed to it is whether we should consider changing any of our Pokemon in anticipation of facing Red. It makes a few suggestions such as Jolteon, which is kind of pointless considering Ampharos. It also suggests Rhydon, Machamp really loves that Pokemon, and Lapras. Okay, maybe there are some things we can work with here. I ask it specifically which Pokemon I should exchange from my team. It singles out Kadabra, Gyarados, and some other Pokemon to replace. I get on board with adding Lapras to the team, as it is a really solid choice. Snorlax too, because it's bulky. Rhydon I'm on the fence about, mainly because it doesn't learn any great moves naturally, aside from like Earthquake later on. Now, while I can get on board with those Pokemon, I replace Gyarados, Kadabra, and Piloswine. It's the next part that truly rustles my jimmies. Chat wants these Pokemon to be a minimum of level 60. The only good way to level up these Pokemon is by repeatedly battling the Elite Four again and again, and again and again and again. I cannot remember how many times I fought them to reach the levels, but it was a mind-numbing amount. Oh, and chat named Lapras Aquawave, Rhydon, Rygor, and Snorlax Chunk. The Lapras you can get from Union Cave at level 20 on a Friday. We've got some levels to gain there. Rhyhorn can be captured in Victory Road in a somewhat rare encounter. Snorlax you can obviously capture from in the front of Diglett's Cave in Vermilion. And at no point in this run whatsoever did chat ever suggest I capture or use a legendary Pokemon, even though they would have been immensely helpful. So with our team now assembled, we just have to grind the levels to be ready for blue. Several hours later, we're done. When asked about the best strat for blue, we're already off to an excellent start. Using Rhydon, good enough. Using moves like Earthquake because they're super effective, not so good. For Alakazam, we're advised to switch to Typhlosion and use Flamethrower because that is an excellent strat against a Pokemon with high special defense. It finally gets it right against the Rhydon and Executor by using Lapras. Well, maybe not so much against Executor. And Pharos against Arcanine. Meh. Finally, and most unforgivably, it claims that blue has a Blastoise. Not in this game, but blue does have a Gyarados, so using Ampharos is not too far removed. And for some context, upon beating the Elite Four, the game clock was at nearly 34 hours. All that stuff in between has brought it to 55 hours just as we're about to face blue. Awesome. Thank God for being able to speed up the game. Blue starts with Pidgeot first. We've got Rhydon. While Pidgeot's obviously faster, its wing attack barely does any damage. When we use Takedown, it does about over half, which is decent enough. Rhydon then tanks another hit. We use another Takedown, and that's Pidgeot done. Executor is up next, so we bring out Lapras. Not quite sure how it's going to go. We outspeed Blue's Pokemon and use Ice Beam. The move sighs through Executor's HP and sends it packing. Blue plans to bring out Alakazam next. Under chat's instructions, we've got to send out Ember, sorry buddy. When they're both on the field, we use Flamethrower and it does a fair bit of damage. Alakazam's Psychic brings on the hurt, but it doesn't take us down below half HP. Ember can then light up Alakazam and knock it out. I take back what I said, chat. With Rhydon out next, this means we can swap back into Lapras. Instead of Ice Beam, I go with Surf, not that it really would have made much difference. Of course, Rhydon's special defense is pretty abysmal, so that is an OHKO. Blue's now down to just 2 Pokemon, and we are pretty much breezing through this battle. With Gyarados on its way, it's finally time for Volt Wall to shine. Our electric moves are double super effective. We send out a Thunder Punch and it is a one-shot on the Gyarados. We've got just 1 Pokemon left, Arcanine. Chat suggests we stick with Ampharos, so we don't make the swap. When Arcanine's out, it's able to outspeed us and use Flamethrower. It does a fair bit of damage, though we do avoid the burn thankfully. Thunder Punch ends up taking Arcanine well past half HP. We should have this. Ampharos tanks another Flamethrower. We use Thunder Punch, and the battle's over. Okay, so chat has taken us this far on its questionable advice. Can we weaponize its wisdom to surmount our final hurdle? Well, the first order of business is leveling up some more, to level 70 in fact, which is not tedious in the least. This time around, it doesn't make much sense to keep going through the Elite Four because the XP you earn from each trainer is equivocal to the XP you can earn from battling Pokemon that appear in the final cave section of Mount Silver. Doesn't make it any less of a chore though. So finally, the strat breaks down like this. Use Espeon against Espeon. Awful. It's not even his first Pokemon. That's always going to be Pikachu. Great. Things get better when chat suggests using Lapras against Blastoise because of its type advantage. Another lie. Typhlosion's role in the battle is to deal with Venusaur, Snorlax and Lapras. Nah. Ampharos is there to deal with Pikachu. Fantastic. Snorlax we can do with as we see fit. Rhydon is then our emergency Pokemon. I'm overflowing with confidence. We start with Ampharos against Pikachu. Pikachu uses Quick Attack, but probably would have outsped us anyway. When we then use Thunder Punch, though Pikachu resists the move, it still does just over half damage, which isn't bad. Pikachu does get a crit with its next turn, but because it's not close to Healing Rage, we can just tank the hit and use another Thunder Punch to KO it. Against Espeon, we have Espeon. The only saving grace is that we still have Bite, which is actually useful. When we use it against Red's Espeon, we can take it past half HP. But then Espeon uses Reflect. In spite of that, Our next bite KOs Blue's Espeon. 2 Pokemon down and no casualties on our side. Yet. With Red planning to send out Snorlax next, we can pivot to Ember on chat's advice. Flamethrower from Ember starts off barely doing anything, and after Snorlax uses Amnesia, it becomes absolutely pathetic. Not only that, when Snorlax uses Body Slam, it takes up a fair chunk of health and we get paralyzed. Though we do try to get off some attacks with Ember, ultimately we're just no match against Snorlax. We lose our first Pokemon. I consider chat's advice and send out Voltwall. Our Ampharos' Thunder Punch is pathetically weak to a special defensively strong Pokemon like Snorlax. Then, when Snorlax hits us with another Body Slam, things start looking pretty grim. However, Ampharos pulls things back with a crit Thunder Punch, but it's just not enough to KO the Snorlax. Of course, we then see Rest, and Snorlax regains all that health we spent so long chipping away at. We do get a few more hits, but it's pretty obvious we're not winning against Snorlax with Ampharos. When Snorlax eventually wakes up, it uses Body Slam, and Ampharos goes bye-bye. Next on the chopping block, we have Chunk versus Chunk. While we do get to go first with Rollout, Red Snorlax then uses Body Slam, and of course it ends up paralyzing us. Chunk tries its best to make a dent in the other Snorlax, but chat's been leading us astray. Even just as we try to rest, Snorlax gets in another Body Slam and KOs us. Now we've got some exigent circumstances and it requires a Rygor to solve them. We go for Earthquake, which does solid damage, coming oh so close to defeating Snorlax. I was expecting another rest, but that doesn't arrive. Next turn, we can take out the Behemoth, having lost 3 Pokemon on the way. For Venusaur, we can swap into Solaris eventually. I was just trying to decipher chat's often hazy instructions. When we do eventually send out Espeon, we have Psychic. Thankfully, that move is a one-shot against Venusaur. Now, we have the numbers advantage over Red's team. With Charizard on its way, we pivot to Aqua Wave. We've got Surf, but Charizard is a faster Pokemon. It goes for a Fire Spin and ends up missing. When we hit with Surf, we come extremely close to knocking it out, but Charizard just hangs on. The next chance it gets, it uses Flamethrower. Not only does it do some decent damage, but Lapras gets burned. We should still be fine though. We've not got a type advantage, but we do have a numbers advantage at least. I contemplate switching to Espeon, but decide to stick with Lapras. We're not exactly a powerhouse here. Ice Beam is pathetic. I was hoping for the freeze. We don't get it, and those burns will just keep proccing. We do switch to Body Slam and get a crit, but then Blastoise uses Surf and it gets a crit. Aqua Tail's now on 10 HP. We go for a final Body Slam. It now does barely anything and the burn takes effect. We're KO'd. We now just have 2 Pokemon remaining. Going back to chat's last resort Rygor strat, we send it out and pray. Blastoise is faster, it uses Surf, Rygor gets washed away, leaving us on just 1 Pokemon. Can Solaris take us over the finish line? When our Espeon hits the field, we're able to outspeed Blastoise and use Psychic, and that is enough to take it down, and we win. Well, it may have been a rocky and slightly absurd journey that took us nearly 70 in-game hours, but we made it. At what cost though? I guess some congratulations are in order to ChatGPT. You only mostly offered terrible advice when it comes to strategizing a game that is over 20 years old. Despite the questionable choices Chat did make as far as strategy goes, what did save it was the fact that our Pokemon were decently leveled and varied enough to overcome its challenges. Not only that, we actually did not lose a single battle that whole run. Would I consider it a point of advice while doing another Pokemon run? Absolutely not. But its decisions and reasoning were interesting, if nothing else. One thing I will say is the whole point of using a bit of technology like ChatGPT is that, number one, you need to have some knowledge of what you're asking it about so as to get good answers, and number two, you're supposed to keep going in a back and forth discussion in order to refine those answers. It's not this all-knowing thing. Because this wasn't some scientific study and just a bit of fun, I purposely didn't spend ages tuning and refining questions and responses because it was more interesting to just go with its first response and just see what happened. But hey, maybe you're one of those AI prompt engineers I keep seeing around the place and could have made the run even easier. Feel free to let me know. If you have an idea for an interesting run in the same style, let me know. And if you want to like and subscribe, go for it. Until next time, have a good one.